Hello friends, welcome to the software world. I'm Can Dost. Here I'm on a mission to make connections between the software industry and our individual and unique lives. We all have a common goal of solving problems with software. Whatever happens on our journeys will not stay mysterious anymore. In this episode, my guest is Suzan Bond. She's a certified leadership coach and former COO. She has over 15 years of hands-on experience. She hosts the Lead Dev Bookmark Book Club and writes for the work-life section of Fast Company. She has been studying leadership, psychology, and organizational behavior for many years. Lately, she developed a framework called Leadership Archetypes that she identified 6 leadership styles to describe the behaviors and patterns of how leaders get work done, what drives them, how they add value, and how they work with others. If you're interested in finding out your natural leadership style, seeing your blind spots and navigating your weaknesses, and if you want to learn how to be most effective leader and how to adopt other styles when needed, go to her website, suzanbond.com. It's SUZANBOND.com and check the details. She has a workshop that I'm pretty sure you can get benefit from. Besides her framework, workshop, and articles on her website, she is also writing observations and annotations on Substack. She explores leadership, psychology, and organizational dynamics through real-life stories. I really love her writing and stories. In this episode, we talked about her 2 articles from Observations and Annotations. The first article is called When Leaders Protect the Team, that she focused on protective leadership and the reasons and results of being a protective leader. The second article is called Your Fantasy Leadership Self, where she wrote about the importance of being and finding yourself as a leader. I really enjoyed our talk with Suzan, and I hope you do too. Hello, Suzan. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm great. It's spring in New York, so it's the edge of spring in New York, so I'm pretty happy right now.
I've never been in New York, so I've never been in the States before, so I'm really curious when everything allows me that I'm able to travel.
Yeah, and spring in New York is just amazing. It's a great time of year. So if you can ever come to the States, come to New York in the spring, but
Definitely.
Any time is great, but
Definitely. Yeah. I don't know the seasons, but I have a couple of friends that I will definitely ask when is the worst time to not come there and just make sure that I will not come in the worst time.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. I want to talk about the articles that you wrote. I really liked. And one is both of them are on Substack. You're in our Substack publication called Observations and Annotations.
Yep.
And the first one is When Leaders Protect the Team, and the second one is Your Fantasy Leadership Self. And I must say that the first one, When Leaders Protect the Team, I really, I don't know, I kind of resonated, even though I'm not a leader right now. So when people were kind of trying to protect me, let's say, from the maybe upper level management or from other things. And I felt that you gave a couple of reasoning, and these are the things that I want to talk about mostly.
Wait, can I ask you because I would love to hear someone's perspective of how you felt when someone was trying to protect you.
It is sometimes good. It gives you the feeling when someone tries to protect you, it gives you the feeling of that you are safe from a couple of things. But at the same time, if it is too much, then you feel like you're a child,
Yes. Like not capable?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not capable, but they're just overprotective. And then when they're overprotective, it feels like, I don't know, it's I feel like child, even though I'm adult and I can take care of everything on my own and etc. But at the same time, when someone really overprotects me, I feel this way.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. I really think it's a tricky balance, which is what I was trying to convey in that article for folks who have not listened. It's called When Leaders Protect the Team. So that's the name of it. Yeah, it's a tricky balance.
Yeah, it is, and that's like one things that you said is like one of the like because as a not leader person, let's say, or as an I'm a software engineer, and as an engineer, when I think about why my manager or my team lead or anyone uh, try to protect me, and the most of the time I didn't get a lot of answers by myself, couldn't find it. That's why I found your article very helpful. And also I'm trying to like grow into leadership, and also it allows me to grow a little bit of empathy towards that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think actually having empathy for leaders is quite important. Some people might not agree with me on that, but I think that when we're not in leadership, it's easy for us to look at and see leaders as totally incompetent or like, people who don't care about others. And I think that I mean, once in a while that's true, but I think what's more true is that we don't really understand the rigors and the challenges that leaders face. And when we have more empathy, we can like work together rather than being us versus them. So I think it's great that you're like working on that and thinking about that. It's a great way to grow into leadership.
I hope so. I mean, this is like a learning path, and I know that it's for everyone. It's a learning path. No one
Yeah.
born as a leader or something.
Right.
Some of us are maybe more inclined to by our personalities, but it's
Yes.
definitely something that everyone can learn and grow into.
Well, yeah, and just on that note too, when people come to leadership and think about it from more of an empathetic perspective, it's different than I've heard leaders come into it like, oh God, they're so incompetent. I can do better. And then I think sometimes they get in there and they're like, oh my gosh, wow, this is a way more challenging than I thought. I think it really blows their mind. And I think it makes their transition a little bit harder, frankly. So again, I love that perspective.
I think like also the transition is most of the time what I see is the timing, like not the which time, but about this or maker or what was it manager schedule thing is the change at that one is also affects. That brings me to
Yes.
your first point is like the reasons why someone protects the team or the team member is that to reduce their wasted time. And this is what I faced as well. Like, yeah, my leader or let's say my manager tries to reduce my wasted time, saying that, okay, yeah, you don't have to focus on these things. I will take care of these things. Sometimes I also found it very hard to make this balance, by the way, because sometimes they share little knowledge that is sometimes required to have more, but sometimes they share too much knowledge that shouldn't be shared. So, like your first point resonates me a lot, actually, as an engineer, and I would love to like to get more from you about that. Like, what kind of thinking leaders have about reducing the wasted time of the team, or maybe I can ask in the other way around: if I grow into the leadership role, how can I make sure that I don't waste people's time?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, I think this is actually quite tricky. I mean, I think that there are reasons why leaders get into a place that's overly protective, and most of them are from really good intentions, like
Yeah,
I want
exactly.
to protect the team so that they can focus on their work, so that they can make sure that they're moving towards a goal, because nothing is worse than constant interruptions. I mean, particularly like, so let's just think about software engineers, right? Context switching, constant
Yes.
interruptions. My husband is a software engineer. I mean, he's an infrastructure lead now, but so I absolutely know. This is my house. I live with this kind of person, and so I understand that the depths of like how challenging that is. And I think it's like a constant balance. And I actually think, I don't know if I talked about this much in the article, But one thing I would say is, the impulse to like streamline meetings and contact is
Mhm.
really wise. I think it's also, are you checking in with folks and making sure, do you feel like you're getting enough information? Do you feel like you're involved in decisions enough? Where would you want to be more involved? Where are you lacking context? So I think it's that, set those things and then checking in with the team on a frequent basis to then tweak those dials. Did you dial, do you have to
Mhm.
calibrate? Did you dial it down too hard, or was the dial way too open and they're getting inundated? And I think it's also listening to subtle cues, like, oh my God, we have so many meetings, another meeting. Or, you say, okay, we're going to meet again. And everyone is quiet or stony faced. Then it's like
Yeah.
paying attention. Oh, okay, maybe I need to be more dialed down the meetings and the
Mhm.
information flow a little bit, because I think the real trick here too is, one of the concerns that I often hear from the team is, I'm not getting enough information.
Mhm.
So I think it's tricky. How do you give enough information versus things like meetings? And I do think asynchronous means, Slack and other kinds of things can really
Mhm.
help. But I do think it's like an interplay. So it's also, the leader has to make sure that they're working with the team and not just setting direction and setting everything on their own. It's that relationship.
Definitely. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's the balance, but the I'm really like in the point of, this is a relationship, and it needs
Yeah.
to be taken care of very well,
Yeah.
and in some balance. And also because it's at the end, the information I get, also whatever the other thing that you talk about, related to this in the article, is that the growth of, like, my personal career
Yep.
growth, for example.
Yep.
If my manager or if my leader doesn't share with me a lot of information that I need, then
Yep.
it prevents me, right?
Yeah. Career growth is a big one. Making sure that, because sometimes we might have, if we really care about our team and we want to see them do
Hmm.
well, we might try to limit their interaction. Let's say, oh, this is a really challenging problem, I'll just take it on. Or thinking like, or I'll really lead this and you can kind of shadow me, because I
Hmm.
think we're nervous about the stress and the challenge.
Hmm.
And the thing is, sometimes we actually, like, I think people grow almost most from challenging assignments. Now again, there's that dial. We can give no. I think one of the biggest problems is we give a challenging assignment and give no support. I see that, and people fail, and then they're like, oh, well, they're
Hmm.
not ready. Well, did you give them enough support?
Hmm.
But the other side of that is that we dial way down too far, and we, basically take it over for them and don't really give them the opportunity to feel challenged. And feel a level of good stress.
Yeah, that's
That's
the
where we grow, right? That's where we
yes.
grow.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if I don't get enough challenge, that I cannot grow, basically, as an
Yes.
engineer, software engineer.
Yes.
But the too
Yes.
much challenge is, I think, what makes them a bit more protective, because they don't want to challenge too much, that it might cause me harm in that case.
Right. Right. Yep.
This, like, the challenges, I think, is the another part that you mentioned in the article, about the organizational frictions and dysfunction, like, having a toxic environment. I think where the challenges that the leaders maybe should protect the team is from these toxic environments, that might cause from the toxic environments. What do you think about that? Like, the organizational friction, how the leaders approach to these kind of things to protect the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think folks who haven't read this section is really talking about um, where is there, like, you have to discern the difference between organizational friction and then toxic dysfunction. So organizational friction happens, let's say, I mean, companies are dynamic organisms. And
Mhm.
so let's say when you're scaling, there almost is always organizational friction. This is normal. Things are changing. It's like I was liken it to a teenager. We're outgrowing our clothes and our voice is changing and things are
Mhm.
shifting, and we don't quite know how to operate this new entity. So I think that that's normal. And that's a case where we say, okay, so we need to work through that. I think there's a difference in toxic dysfunction where it has become so negative that it's impacting the team. And so, yes, in that case, we absolutely want to protect the team. But what we don't want, I think what happens is we protect the team sometimes too long and don't really resolve the underlying symptom of that. So, let's say someone's behavior has turned toxic. 100%, I get why you want to try to protect people from that, because as I wrote in my last article yesterday is about emotional contagion and how emotions are catchy. And so you do want to protect against that, but leaders have to make sure that they're addressing the underlying thing. And the hard thing is I see toxic behavior just linger for too long. And then protecting the team becomes more problematic because it's not really sustainable.
Yeah, the organization of friction, I think the part that where the team has chance to grow, right? As you said also in the article, which is I find really well defined actually, because sometimes you need those definitions. You need to know what you're talking about, and this helped me to put a name on it. And the dysfunctions are one thing I've found a bit hard to understand, because I'm not a leader, that these things can be solvable in the peers of the leader, like on the maybe on upper management level, the toxic environment. Maybe if someone is causing a harm from the leadership side, these things, I don't know how they can be solvable, because I don't have the experience. That's normal for me to don't understand this point. But as in, I want to change the topic, or turn the question a bit, saying that if we have this toxic environment at work as an employee, and imagine that I'm not in a leadership group.
Yep.
What can I do as an engineer, or maybe some lower level person working in a company, to react this and turn into an opportunity for me to grow?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a great question. I think one way is, I think this really, when you have something that's going on, there's the toxic behavior, and it happens. Toxic behavior just happens. It's actually not a rare event.
Exactly.
As most of us who've been in the work world a while, we're like, oh yeah, that happens. So I think what happens, we're like, oh, I want to run away from it. And I totally get the impulse. And there are companies where it doesn't happen. But I think what you can learn from it is, how do I personally protect or take care of myself when I am in the face of toxic behavior?
Exactly.
How do I build boundaries? How do I build self-care? How do I build what I think of as emotional management? How do I manage my own emotions around that? I think that's a great opportunity. How do I reach out and ask for help when I need it? How do I make sure that I'm addressing this with people who might be able to help? Sometimes I think people tolerate toxic behavior way too long because they're afraid to speak up, because they think, oh, it's only me. I'm doing something wrong. And so I think that it lingers sometimes because leaders don't actually understand what's happening at certain points, because the toxic behavior is only at a certain level or to certain people or in certain situations. So I think it also is an opportunity for someone who is more of an individual contributor or those kinds of roles to learn how to speak up and find constructive ways to talk about that behavior and the impact on them.
Yeah. So in the article, that the last point that you mentioned is the unintentional ego, which happens more rarely than the previous 2 points we talked about. And here you say that the leaders unintentionally make themselves hero of the team, and how people, how leaders, can be aware of their behavior in this point.
Yeah, I think part of this, I don't know if I talked about it in this article, to be frank with you, but one thing here is I think that there's a trick here. And often when a leader falls into sort of that ego trap where they make it about themselves, their ego, or make themselves into a hero, is a lot of it is when is that the shift from even being a manager to a leader is actually pretty massive. The leap is quite big. There, it is not more of the same. It is quite different. And one of the things that is quite different is as leaders move into more senior roles, they move largely further away from the work, and they move, and more from executing and directing and more into guiding and shaping and strategizing. And I think that we don't do a good enough job. There's very little onboarding for new leaders, very little. It is something that I really would like to see changed. And I don't mean just like, here's your laptop, here's the Slack room. And, great. Those are all great things that we do for all employees and we're needed. But we don't do enough to help them think about how they need to change their role and think about things differently. And so I do think that I see all the time, I hear about this all the time, leaders take on way too much responsibility themselves. They haven't made the leap from what they, it's like, well, I'm used to doing it all. I'm used to doing it. I'm used to being close to the work. So if I want to get it done, I just dig in harder and I do it myself. And they haven't understood how to be responsible for something without doing it yourself. And it's actually quite tricky, right? I'm responsible, but now I have to do everything through people. And I have to be responsible for something that I really can't control, because a leader who goes down and executes too much, it becomes extremely ineffective fairly quickly. They become overwhelmed. And actually, I see and have heard of many leaders who have failed out because of this. So I think that there's like an awareness. This is something, if I were a new leader, I would think a lot about how I get the work done. How am I working through people, and how am I learning how to take responsibility? And when I need to get something done, maybe my first impulse is to go to do it because that's what's made me successful before, right? It's easy. Yeah. I mean, we have a well-worn pattern, like a neural pathway in our head, but to stop and pause and think about, well, what's another way I can make sure that this gets done?
Yeah, it's like looking in your self, right? It's like it's saying that, turning yourself. Okay, yeah, I was maker before maybe, and now I'm a leader, and now most of the things are changed, and maybe as a leader, maybe I shouldn't go and do stuff directly all the time.
Yep.
And just as you also, one thing you mentioned, which I really like, is getting a coach or mentor can help.
Yeah.
The leader a way to catch these things.
Yep. They need some support. Leaders do not get enough support. Coaching is now becoming much more mainstream and people are dramatically having more, but it can really help they need more feedback loops.
Yeah, definitely. Feedback loops are absolutely having, like when you climb the ladder up in the organization, I believe that the feedback loops are getting less and less. That even sometimes in some cultures, they don't give any feedback, which is a different form. But finding yourself is the trick here. And I think that getting extra help is a good way. And I have a mentor. I have a coach, I have a mentor, which I'm talking all the time. And it helps me extremely. Why not? It can't help the leader in any way.
Yep.
This brings me to your second article, actually, because in the second article, you talk about actually finding yourself as a leader. The new leader can become a leader by changing the tribes, or maybe growing in their tribe as a leader. And when the new leader starts, they want to fit in. They want to belong to the team or the work. And finding themselves as a new leader is also tricky, because there are tons of books that I also read, and it's really hard to find yourself, or it's really easy to lose yourself, actually, because everyone has an idea and everyone has an approach. These approaches are not suitable for the situation that you're in, and you start imitating the other leaders. That's what you talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on what are the problems of imitating other leaders, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for those who are listening, it's called Your Fantasy Leadership Self, which is just to remind them. You mentioned at the beginning of the show. I mean, I think the problem is that when we try to imitate others. I mean, listen, as children, that's how we learn, right? We imitate someone else and that's how we learn behavior. So there's a real developmental skill in there, particularly when we're children. And I do think that there's a way in which imitation can be a helpful way to learn new skills. I think it's that it's limited. So it's not that it's never useful, it's that it has limited use. And it is limited use because when we talk about leadership as a society, I think we often talk about it in more narrow terms than there really are, or in more narrow terms than is useful. There are lots of ways to be a leader. And in fact, I've just developed a framework I'm calling leadership archetypes. I identified 6 different archetypes of leaders, and
Mhm.
all of them are valuable and all of them bring results. They just do it in different ways. And if we try to adopt a style that isn't natural to us, we look awkward and uncomfortable. And and there's jobs, roles missing on the leadership team when we just imitate rather than dig deep to understand what we naturally bring to the table as a leader.
So what you're saying is basically don't just imitate, but also don't leave out the imitation and take it as a chance to learn something new and move on. Did I get it
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I would say like look at it and say, okay, well, what's good about that? What about that works? So, like in the article, I talk about, I mean, Steve Jobs loved to wear the same
Hmm.
outfit. It reduced decision fatigue. Okay, so I would say, well, where does decision fatigue? What do I need to change in my life? And that's a very like stylistic one, but it could be anything.
Hmm.
However that looks. So yes, finding a way, looking at it and pulling something from it, but not just doing it automatically, like a knee-jerk response, but really thinking more deeply about it.
Yeah, because if it doesn't fit your personality, and if you're just trying to be someone else, then it will most probably fail at some
Right.
point.
Yep.
Yeah, also like the other part that you also talk about is the never showing vulnerability. And I often see people doing that. And I often see people who are showing vulnerabilities. Sometimes one is good, sometimes one is bad. And I really have no strong opinion on it. But what I believe is the transparency that comes with it is more important. As an individual contributor, I understand that whenever my a manager is transparent and tries to bring the feelings as well, like accepting vulnerability or accepting the failures, it my respect grows basically, because then I can understand that, okay, yeah, I mean, they're not they're not God. They can make decisions and they can have the consequence of decisions, and then they can fail in these things.
Mm-hmm.
But you talk about that being strong leads to isolation in these kind of things when they don't show any vulnerability, and they become workaholic and they don't ask for help. And I want to hear your thoughts on how leaders can approach to these situations when they found themselves inside this, let's say, kind of a black hole of always trying to look strong.
Yeah. I mean, listen, again, it's another one that is hard. Um, because as you sort of intimated, if we're overly vulnerable and share everything like, oh my God, I'm freaking out and it's all going to be a
Yeah,
mess. I mean, you're just going to freak everybody out and like the
exactly.
team is going to lose confidence. So, you have to have a filter. You just do, as a leader. Uh, at the same time, I see, and like, one of my art in my model, one of my archetypes, some leaders tend to do this more than others. Some leaders find vulnerability more easily. Those who are take on a lot of stuff and feel like they have to be strong all the time, they are more susceptible to uh, wanting to shove away vulnerability or not share with the team and always be strong. And so I think it's an opportunity to sort of step back and reflect. Am I getting enough help on? Am I taking on too much? Am I getting enough help? And what is my relationship with failure? Because a lot of times it stems from failure. I don't want to fail, and I don't want to fail publicly because that feels even worse. And leaders fail publicly, so it's really hard. I mean, I know I felt this. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I always will be, and failing publicly was really hard for me. So I think it's a matter of stepping back and knowing it's like, what's my relationship with failure, and that it's not the end of the world if I ask for help. And that, asking for help can bring in new ideas. And again, it's like also stepping back, because I think some leaders are so busy, especially in startups and scaling startups. We're always working and thinking about the challenges that lay ahead. And we need to take time to slow down and stop so that we can, figure out, maybe I do need a little bit of help. Maybe there's something else I should look for. Again, that goes around vulnerability.
Yeah. I mean, one thought I have is most of the time I connect the failure or never showing vulnerabilities to accountability, because like people, most often individual contributors are responsible for doing the job, but the leaders are accountable for the work, right? And now I'm trying to understand how the people can keep this, let's say, balance, but it's not a really balance. I mean, it's like people are accountable and they need to accept the failures. They need to find the balance of showing the vulnerabilities. But when they are being accountable, and if the things or the decisions they make makes the team fail, how they can show the vulnerability? Because sometimes there are some mistakes that, I don't know, sometimes the leaders should leave, and accept these kind of things. And I'm thinking, like, in these kind of bad situations, like really bad situations, that project failure can happen. I'm not talking about toxic environments.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the more like the nature of the work.
Yeah. Failure happens. It just does.
Yeah, exactly. So, and in these kind of situations, how the leaders can approach to show vulnerability enough, but not too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think that we don't always have to show vulnerability. It's like best like sprinkled on, like when you throw on too much salt in the recipe and you're like, wow, this is really I can't eat this, versus like a sprinkle. So I think that vulnerability is more like, a side dish rather than like the whole thing. So I want to be clear with people. I don't think we should always be the vulnerability. We should always lead only with vulnerability. It can absolutely become too much. To disclose too much, and we can almost become too emotional and put emotions on our team. But I think part of it being vulnerable is like, just saying, oh, this wasn't successful. Even like, I failed. I feel like I failed to do something. Let's talk about our, like at the team, like this didn't work. I feel like I failed to do something. Let's talk about what happened. What was your experience? And I think part of vulnerability is not just bottling it all up and like, I have to find all the solutions, but working with the team to find solutions is a form of vulnerability for leaders. I know it may not seem like one, but it is a massive form of leadership and vulnerability to just work with the team to find the solution. Like, where did we fail? Where did our connection break down? Maybe the leader was saying something, but the team was completely taking it a different way. So I think it's like seeing it's even just speaking with the team instead of, again, the impulse is to take it on all themselves and solve the problems by themselves.
Yeah. Now I understand. Yeah. The next point, the thing that you talk about in the article also, that leaders must look inside first to figure out actually what's going on. So when we think about imitating others, showing vulnerability, and etc., what should they look inside to find out?
It's a great question. That article could have been like 1 billion pages long, so it's good. I'm trying to write shorter. I mean, I think that what they want to look for is natural, like their natural habits, their natural style, their values. So things like when was I successful, and when am I happiest? Like when do I feel like most to myself? Let's say, so some leaders might feel like I have to be very directive. I have to come with all the answers. But then they might look back and say, wait, but when I worked collaboratively on this project and the team and I worked together to set the goals, set the direction, and plot out the plan, I was happy. That worked for me. There are very collaborative styles of leadership that that are really effective. So I think that's one way, is to look and say, when am I most effective, and not just this project because I did all the work. Okay, we don't want examples that are because I did the work. They're examples of like, how did we get things done, digging deeper. So that's one way, is to really look at when do we feel most alive, when have we been most effective. Like for me, I'm best in collaboration with others. I love collaborating with others. Like, so with my teams, I'm really collaborative and am as collaborative as I can be. So taking on a style where I would tell everybody everything would not work for me. And so it's a matter of, again, being introspective and thinking about what works for us. I think there's also assessments that you can take that are really useful, that can help you think through, like Strengths Finder. Part of the purpose of my leadership archetypes is to help people understand their behavior and where it fits in. So Strengths Finder, by the way, is from the Gallup organization, and it has created 34 strengths, and it rank orders them, and it can give you some signs about where you're your best.
I will definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Yep. So that's something that it can be really helpful. But again, I think it's about taking time to be reflective and pull apart what are the expectations and the pattern matching and the imitation I see in the world versus who am I in my essence, and how is that effective, and how do I become better at being effective in that way? And also, again, valuing it. Like valuing, because I think, again, we think of leadership as like the strong hero, like basically Tom Cruise in any Mission Impossible film. And that's one way, but like understanding that there are lots of ways, and that we are most successful when the leadership team has multiple different styles of leadership. Because that's one thing that we don't talk about enough, and I know we have to get going, but the leadership team, the makeup of that team and how we're all working together is just as important. And working, what I say, across with peers is just as important as working inside your team.
I definitely agree on that point, because like the leadership is also a team, right? So it's another team that should work really close and really together to continue toward the set goals, whatever the company has, let's say. And for the last thing you say, which I really liked the wording, to be honest, and I want to mention quickly, you say real leaders. When you say if real leaders do this or that, then it clearly states that you are not listening yourself. That's an amazing writing. Then because
like, it's like what we say in our head, right? It's like, listen to what you say in your head. Real leaders, or experienced leaders or whatever, right? We say these things in our head and we don't catch ourselves saying them. We don't realize that we have a hidden assumption under there.
Yeah, it even helped me right now, because as I said, I'm not a leader right now, but I'm pursuing a career in that side. And I ask myself this one, do I ask this? Like, do I tell this myself? Do I tell, real leaders, or leaders do that, not the real leaders even, because it doesn't mean then. That's why it helped me so much. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's like we have to pull apart, like, what do we mean by leader? And often I think it's like our definitions of these things are so narrow, and frankly, we use them to be to put ourselves down, or to, you know what I mean? Like leaders do it all the time. I will tell you, I've had 2 conversations in the last week just about that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed our talk, and thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
If you liked this episode, please follow the show and share the episode with one of your friends, colleagues, or family members who might find it interesting. Until next time, take care.